right back with me, Nina Rosman. We're going to move on to the next topic, talking about youth. How can investing in youth is not only a moral obligation, but also a smart economic strategy. As you can see, talking about providing young people with quality education, healthcare, and employment opportunities can empower them to contribute to the social and economic progress of their communities and even nation. And to explore how investing in youth can lead to sustainable economic growth and what are the best practices and policy to achieve this goal, right now in the studio is Young Global Leaders World Economic Forum and also founder and CEO of Digital Media Nusantara, Rohan Ramakrishnan. I want to say thank you very much for joining here. How are you?
Thank you so much, Nina. I'm doing good. How are you keeping?
I'm good.
Thanks for having me.
We're going to talk about the youth and how, like I mentioned in the start, it's not only for a moral obligation, but they also, we can say, simplify, they are the future.
Right.
So to kickstart our conversation here, maybe you can share with us how economic growth influence opportunities for, we can say, education, healthcare, employment, and even civic engagement among the young people.
I think like the first thing that we need to establish is that youth unemployment isn't just a small issue in the corner of the economy. It's actually a macroeconomic issue. It's a global issue today, right? As the saying goes, children are the future, and the more we integrate them into the workforce, into how the economy develops, the more vibrant, dynamic society we have. In Malaysia, 60% of our population is below the age of 35, right? That's sort of the range. And this is pretty much a millennial brass. So they're very much exposed to the digital era and the digital economy. And how do we get them and how do we incentivize them to get involved in participating in the economic growth of the country, right? That is the key question over here, and what policies, measures, and initiatives the government has to make this happen. So I think the first thing that we need to establish is that, what is unemployment rate and how much is that unemployment among the youth, right? And the second thing is like, what kind of jobs are they doing? Are these jobs the kind of jobs that create real impact in the economy, right? So, it's a famous economic law, right? Okun's law. They say that if you can reduce 1% of unemployment, you get 3% raise in gross domestic product, right? So it's not about solving all the unemployment, it's strategically solving the unemployment in a very structured manner.
By going to the roots.
By going right down there. So how? Do you segmentalize it? Do you break it down by the most marginalized? Do you break it down by those who have just graduated? That is very important in a very organized, strategic, structured manner.
All right, understand. We want to say about, as you mentioned, that talking about one problem, if we can solve it. Maybe we can solve another 2 to 3 problems just from this one problem. But talking about how can one country ensure the economic growth translate into the equitable and sustainable youth development, as we can mention, we have to take out the external and internal factors of the economics. Maybe the youth out there say, economy is just boring stuff, but eventually we know the economics bring impacts to our daily life.
Correct.
And eventually to our future generations. Maybe can you explain how can we say feeling the GDP, feeling it? Maybe the baby they say only maybe the grown-up should do it, but how can really the young really understand and feel the GDPs?
Right. So let's actually make it quite simple, right? So Bank Negara came out with their report last week, right? And I saw your talk before this as well when you were sharing the numbers on how the economy is performing, right? So 2.6% was the growth rate.
2.9 for the second quarter.
For the second quarter. So it contracted compared to all the other previous quarters and year on year, although there was expansion in all those periods, right?
Correct.
So now I noticed that one of the key drivers of whatever growth that we got in that second quarter was actually from services, right?
Yes.
So nowadays, all the youngsters, all the millennials want to be involved in the gig economy, right? And one way is to actually make sure that they have the right support, the right funding, the right guidance to actually participate in this gig economy, create startups and new initiatives or new ventures that actually provide high value services, which then actually really drives the GDP of the country, right? The problem here in Malaysia right now is that we are very dependent on foreign labor and unskilled foreign labor who then come in and then just assemble components which are 90% imported and then we export it back. So that's why when people complain about why the ringgit is the way the ringgit is, there's just no demand for ringgit because the amount of volume of ringgit that you actually they would actually convert in the international market to buy our goods is relatively small when the value-add service for the good is smaller,
Yes.
right? So if you can explain this to them in a very simple perspective that, you know, every bit of innovation and that you bring into this space contributes to real impact into the economy, particularly in the services space, because that's what the gig economy is, right? I think they will better appreciate it. Right now, I think there's a lot of confusion on what is their role in the economy, right? It's always about how do we get them unemployed, why are they unemployed, and how do we create schemes or initiatives to get them into the economy to lower the unemployment rate. So do they really understand how they can do it? That's a very important thing.
Talking about explaining economics in a layman term, it's definitely not easy.
Yes, it
It's
is.
definitely easy coming that every individuals, especially the youth, comes from different backgrounds and
Correct.
with different needs. So how can we educate it? How to make they stay educated, informed, despite all the jargon terms in the economics. But we know eventually it brings impact not to only the youth but to our family, friends. I think that is very
Right.
important that we see. Because if you see previously statistic that I do comparison between GDP between states,
Correct.
we all see it's doing good. But what we actually want to understand is maybe we can start from education. How does the educational funding play in improving the youth development?
Right, so actually I was just going to come to that.
Okay.
And I'm going to give you a very practical situation which all the youth actually face, right? So they come out with a degree, right, from university, and then they've done that degree, but then the job market does not create jobs to cater for that degree. So there's automatically a mismatch.
Okay.
Right? And then, of course, they've got to reach a compromise and then they go into these jobs and then they get underpaid. Right? So what do they do next? They say they studied one thing. They're required to work in a job which doesn't match that back. The demand and supply mismatch is there. And on top of that, they need to earn money. So why go through all that misery? So that's why they just say, never mind, I'm better off going and doing ride-hailing or doing some kind of delivery work and earning 2,000, 3,000 ringgit a month, which is more than what they're actually even going to earn if they go into those roles which are being created. So how do you solve this mismatch, right? Some examples you could look, if you take, for example, Estonia, right? All these are countries within the OECD, which I'm going to mention. Estonia, for example, has a youth guarantee plan. So if you come from an extremely marginalized community, they ensure that you have sufficient stipends, sufficient funds to make sure that you complete your education, get the right kind of skills to ensure that you have a proper job at the end of the road. Yeah? Similarly, in Germany, I think it's one of the best systems in the world. They have a dual education system. So you get a very good quality education. At the same time, they focus on ensuring that you do apprenticeships throughout that period of time and you get the right kind of skills. So by the time you finish your degree, you've earned money from doing the apprenticeship, you've become a high-skilled labor, and you've got a good education to benefit you. So then they go into the economy, there isn't a job and skill mismatch, and they're able to contribute to real economic growth by being that high-skilled labor, right? So the other countries like UK and France, you know, these countries as well have similar schemes. So I think the government right now, what they're doing is quite good. They have the Madani TVET, right? So I think under the budget, they allocated like 2.1 billion to help the youth, which is amazing. It's broken down into skill and training, 500 million, and the rest of them have been passed across the startup ecosystem, right? And I think this is a very good approach that they've taken to get the youth really involved in the economic growth of a country and really get the youth to feel empowered. Because like the World Economic Forum had a report recently. They said that Malaysia ranks 41 out of 144 countries in terms of in the global competitive index. What does this mean? It means that our youth and our populace and our workforce is very much highly geared to be able to innovate and to be productive and innovate, you know, and embrace new technologies and create new things that are able to trickle more services into the economy, and comes back to the point I said, drive the economy forward.
As you mentioned previously, the problems transitioning from education to workforce mainly is because of the mismatch of what the requirements of the industry need between the education system. So probably if we're saying that from all the indicators of data, statistics of economy showing declining in the growth, probably this policymaker have to step in, as you can see. So what are the best policies and practices that can be implemented to address especially the issue that you just mentioned just now?
Right. I mean, I think Khairi Jamaluddin said this recently, and he said that to be a good policymaker, you got to make unpopular decisions. And a lot of politicians don't want to make these unpopular decisions, right? For example, the corporate sector. How exactly is the corporate sector participating in this mismatch between talent and their demands in a much more complex corporate world today, right? With all the digitalization, 4IR and stuff like that. So what they're doing right now is that you've got a religious studies degree, automatically by default you're out of the equation, right? But what if this person who chooses to do religious studies is then given an apprenticeship in that corporate, right? Or a trainee scheme like they have in the UK or in most of Europe or OECD, right? They actually have schemes like this which help you transition into that workforce. That is one way of doing it. But in order to enable the corporate sector to do that, the government then has to some way or another subsidize it. But the government can't be subsidizing everything. They've got a huge pension subsidy issue that they need to rationalize, right? We're not collecting enough taxes because we zeroized the GST, right? And there's a host of other structural issues within the economy that needs to be addressed. So how do you solve this problem, right? And what are these policies that you need to create? It's a tough one. And,
this is just chain complex of issue that we have to address.
Exactly. You really need to really make some unpopular decisions, and that is whether you tax the corporates more or you create some kind of incentive for the corporates where there's lower tax for them that they bring in this unskilled.
Maybe you can share somewhere where on the business economy program, so the people, all the corporates watching this, they need the youth to continue the growth for their companies, their business, profit. Not only that, which companies also contribute to the economies. Probably what can you tell them to convince them that youth credibility can prosper one nation's growth and even sustainability?
Yeah, I think one of the key things, and I think I've said this a while ago when I was on another show here at Astro, right? And I said that how do you create a proper corporate culture in order to attract this youth to come in and think that they're not going into a dog-eat-dog world, right? That's one of the reasons they don't want it, and they rather go and do ride-hailing, or they rather go and try start up something in
no stress.
No stress, right? So how do the corporates find a way to work alongside the youth and let them feel comfortable and appreciate their opinions and accept their ideas and embrace those ideas and get their corporate development teams to actually assess these ideas and fund these ideas and nurture the talent and drive the business forward with a clear exit? Do we acquire it then after that, or we help them get funding and go abroad and do what they want to do? Or what is it exactly, that whole full spectrum, that whole supply chain of movements there, right? The whole roadmap, technically, if you want to call it. I still think that a lot of them don't have that. It's a lot of fireside chats and meeting and talking to people and then launching schemes and initiatives, and I don't know whether half of them even work or they don't work. Is there any feedback? But in most cases, you notice that the youth just, they shed and go aside and try to do whatever they need to do, sadly.
Yeah, that's very inspiring, share, and how investing in youth a pathway to sustainable economic growth. I want to say thank you very much to Rohan Ramakrishnan, one of the young global leaders World Economic Forum, at the same time also founder and CEO of Digital Media Nusantara, and everything will be uploaded in astrawani.com and all platform digital Astro AWANI. That's all for Niaga AWANI. Catch you on the next.
Thank you.